They threw me out into the freezing rain at my own husband's family party, calling me worthless trash. His mother laughed while I stood soaking wet on their doorstep, shivering, humiliated, broken. And then, just when I thought I had lost everything, a long black limousine pulled up. The door opened, and my father stepped out. Their laughter died instantly. They had no idea who I really was. But before I tell you how that one night changed everything, let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Alicia, and I'm 28 years old. For as long as I can remember, I've been an outsider. I grew up bouncing from one foster home to another, never knowing my real parents, never having anyone to call family. For years, I longed for love, for a place where I could finally belong. When I met Michael 3 years ago at a small coffee shop downtown, I thought my prayers had been answered. He was charming, successful, kind. For the first time in my life, I felt like I mattered. I thought he was the beginning of my happy ending. But I didn't realize back then that Michael's family would become my greatest nightmare. The Hendersons, old money, big house on the hill. The kind of people who carry themselves like the world owes them respect. From the very first day I met them, they made it clear I wasn't one of them. Beverly Henderson, my mother-in-law, would smile to my face and then whisper cruel things about me behind my back. To her, I was nothing more than a charity case, an unworthy girl from nowhere who had somehow tricked her precious son. For 2 years I tried everything to win them over. I dressed carefully, I learned their manners, I stayed quiet when they mocked me. I thought if I showed enough patience, if I proved myself, they would see me for who I really was. But nothing was ever enough. On the night of Beverly's 60th birthday, I put my whole heart into getting ready. I saved for months to buy a beautiful black dress. I spent hours at the salon. I wanted so badly to be accepted, to finally be treated like family. Michael picked me up in his BMW, and as I sat in the passenger seat, I whispered to myself that maybe tonight would be different. I was wrong. The Henderson mansion glowed like a palace that evening. Luxury cars lined the driveway, servants rushed to and fro, and guests in glittering gowns and tuxedos laughed with glasses of champagne in their hands. The moment we stepped through the door, the whispers started. Eyes turned toward me, scanning me up and down like I was an intruder. Beverly swept across the room, wrapped her arms around her son with joy, then glanced at me with a look that could cut glass. "Alicia," she said, her voice sweet with poison. "How nice that you could make it. I do hope you'll be comfortable tonight. This crowd can be a little sophisticated for someone with your background." Her words stabbed, but I forced a smile. Michael squeezed my hand, told me I looked beautiful. Yet even then I could feel him retreating, like he always did in front of them. The man who whispered love to me in private became a stranger when his family was around. The party was a show of wealth, ice sculptures, an orchestra, tables overflowing with food too pretty to eat. I tried to blend in, to make conversation, but every question felt like a test I failed. When they asked where I went to college and I said community college, their smiles froze. When they asked about my family and I admitted I grew up in foster care, their eyes turned cold, and suddenly they needed to walk away. Still, I held my head up and kept going, determined to belong. And then the moment came that destroyed everything. I was standing near the dessert table when one of Beverly's friends bumped into me. My champagne glass flew from my hand, splashing red wine all over Beverly's white designer dress. The room froze. Dozens of eyes locked on me. My hand shook as I grabbed napkins, apologizing over and over. But Beverly recoiled like I was diseased. "Don't touch me," she hissed, before raising her voice so the entire room could hear. "I should have known better than to let someone like you around decent people. This is exactly what I expected." The humiliation burned hotter than fire. I turned to Michael, begging with my eyes for him to defend me, to stand by his wife. But he stood frozen, staring at the floor, too weak to challenge his mother. Beverly wasn't finished. She stepped onto a small platform and silenced the entire orchestra. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, her voice booming with false dignity, "it's time we address the elephant in the room. Some people simply don't belong in civilized society. They bring nothing but shame and embarrassment wherever they go. I refuse to let my family's reputation be tarnished by this. This girl. Her words hit me like a slap. The room buzzed with whispers. People nodded. People smirked. And still, Michael said nothing. Beverly pointed directly at me. I want you out of my house. Now. My heart shattered. I turned to my husband one last time, praying for him to say something, to be the man I thought I married. He looked at me, then at his mother, and whispered words I will never forget. Maybe it's best if you just go home. Alicia, we can talk about this tomorrow. My husband chose them. He chose their approval over his wife's dignity. In that moment, something inside me died. Security was called. 2 large men in suits walked me to the door as the room fell silent. Each click of my heels echoed like judgment. Beverly's voice followed me. Sharp and cruel. Some people need to learn their place in this world. And her place is definitely not here. The doors slammed shut behind me, and I was left outside in the storm. Rain poured so hard I could barely breathe. Lightning cracked across the sky. My hair stuck to my face, my dress clung to my skin, and my shoes sank into the mud. I was stranded, heartbroken, and completely alone. Once again, I was that little foster child, unwanted and abandoned. I started walking down the long driveway, tears mixing with the rain. Then I saw headlights approaching. A black limousine rolled up beside me and stopped. Slowly, the back window slid down. A man looked out at me. His face took my breath away, older, but eerily familiar. Same skin tone, same high cheekbones, same eyes. Alicia, he said softly. Alicia Thompson. Hearing my old name shook me. Nobody used that name anymore. He stepped out of the car, not caring that the rain soaked his expensive suit. My name is Robert Thompson, he said, voice trembling. I've been searching for you for 20 years. I'm your father. The world spun around me. I whispered that it was impossible, that I was abandoned. But he showed me a photo, my mother, Angela, holding a baby with my eyes. He told me she had died in a car accident when I was only 6 months old. He told me he had been in the military overseas. And when he returned, I had already been placed into foster care. He had spent 2 decades hiring investigators, fighting courts, following every lead to find me. And now, by fate or miracle, he had. I listened in disbelief as we drove away from the mansion. He told me about my mother, her smile, her dreams, her love. He told me about his company, Thompson Industries, one of the largest tech empires in the world. And slowly, the pieces of my life began to shift. The girl Beverly called trash was in fact the daughter of a man worth billions. But money wasn't what mattered. What mattered was that, for the first time in my life, I wasn't alone. I had a father who had never stopped looking for me. When the limousine stopped, in front of a towering skyscraper, with Thompson Industries, glowing in lights across the top, I realized the truth. I had finally found where I belonged. Yet deep inside, I wasn't done. I looked at my father and said, "Take me back." He hesitated, but then he smiled with pride. "Now you sound like my daughter," he said. And so, 20 minutes later, we returned to the Henderson mansion. 3 black cars pulled up. Lawyers and security stepped out behind us. Beverly opened the door, still in her stained dress, her face twisting with annoyance, until she saw the man beside me. Her eyes widened as whispers spread like fire. Robert Thompson, billionaire. Thompson Industries. Robert's voice cut through the silence. "You threw my daughter out into a storm. You called her trash. You humiliated her in front of strangers. And you did it to the daughter of a man who could buy your entire empire 10 times over." The room froze. Michael stammered excuses. Beverly tried to backtrack. But the truth was out. Their cruelty had been exposed. I looked at them, my voice finally steady. "I would have loved you anyway, if you had only shown me kindness. But you showed me who you really are. Money doesn't change that. You lost me long before tonight." And with that, I turned away. I left behind the man who had betrayed me and the family that had despised me. And for the first time in my life, I walked into a future where I knew my worth. Because dignity can't be bought, and love can't be faked.